For our weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. Today is August 29th, which on this day in 1893, the patent for the clasp blocker was granted. Now, those of you that don't know what the clasp blocker is, today it's known as the zipper. I thought that was a really good fact for the day. So in today's briefing, we're going to cover the most recent trends that our threat intelligence team is witnessing in the trenches. My name is Keith Wojcicki, Global Head of Threat Intelligence for Kroll. This week, we are joined by Senior Vice President George Glass, Vice President Dave Truman, Vice President Ryan Hicks, and Vice President Sarah Becker from our Cyber Threat Intel team. We're going to cover the following trends our team is concentrating on, looking at Ivanti, Telerik, the XLOADER. I'm going to go over some phishing with QR coding with Ryan. Dave's going to pick up some WinRAR, and we'll round everything up with Sarah talking about the Ransomware Roundup. With that, I'm going to turn over to George. George.
Thank you very much, Keith. Last week, we released a out-of-band threat intelligence update about a Ivanti Sentry 0-day, and we have some updates on that particular topic today. So just to round up what we talked about last week, a vulnerability was reported in Ivanti Sentry named CVE 2023-38035. This is in Ivanti Sentries, used to be called Mobile Iron Sentry, so make sure you're checking to see if you have Mobile Iron Sentry as well. And this vulnerability impacts all supported versions, even the latest, the versions 9.18, 9.17, 9.16, and older and previous versions are also at risk. That includes those that used to be called Mobile Iron Sentry. It has a CVSS score of 9.8 and allows unauthenticated remote code execution, which allows an unauthenticated attacker to access some sensitive APIs that are used to configure the Ivanti Sentry on the admin portal. And that's port 8443. So if that port is exposed to the internet, expect exploitation. And that's a common port that Ivanti set up for the MICS or the System Manager portal. Now, to update on this already exploited 0-day, on August 22nd, Horizon 3 released a technical breakdown of the vulnerability. They did a patch reversal on some of the RPM scripts, which are used to mitigate the vulnerability, and they released a POC for it. Now, we took a look at the POC, and it appears that exploitation is absolutely trivial, and it just allows a direct shell command to be executed on the server itself. As you can see from the screenshot to the right there, that's a screenshot from the POC that Horizon posted. It's really trivial to patch the service, the HTTPS connection. You just initiate a patch of that, hit the service URL, that config service URL on port 8443, and then you're uploading a DTO. And as you can see in the DTO, that is a pretty trivial POC to exploit. You just give it your command, and whether you want that to run as root. So we expect exploitation of this to happen imminently, and everyone that is running Ivanti Sentry should patch ASAP. And to do that, you need to update to the latest release. So that's either 9.18, 9.17 or 9.16 according to your version number, and apply the RPM scripts which are provided in the weekly threat intelligence report. That's a bunch of mitigations in those scripts which essentially patch this service. So very, very important one there. Moving on to some observations that the IR and MDR teams have made over the last quarter. What we're seeing is what appears to be opportunistic targeting of Telerik UI. Telerik is a framework, a web development framework, which is offered by Progress, and we've observed an increase in the number of attacks on Telerik over the last quarter, especially compared to last year. And what we're seeing is kind of similar to what we saw before in 2020 when we released a blog post on this, whereby CVE 2019-18935 is exploited, and that's assumed to have occurred after exploiting CVE 2017-11317 and 11357, which allows a threat actor to gain access to the certificates running on the Telerik server, and then using that 2019 vulnerability to remotely execute code. And what we observe is fairly opportunistic deployment of web shells, and those web shells are not interacted with immediately. It seems that like there is a round of opportunistic exploitation, and then the threat actors come back to those web shells at a later date, sometimes as much as 2 or 3 weeks later. Again, this appears to be different to what we saw in 2020, where those vulnerabilities were used to deploy card skimmers. In all of the cases, we detected the malicious activity, and so it wasn't sort of allowed to continue. So we're not entirely sure what the final actions or objectives are for those particular threat actors. But one thing that I do want to point out and make absolutely clear is that earlier this year in March, CISA released an advisory specifically around Telerik exploitation and that 2019 vulnerability. They saw that used against government services, and the actions there were very much related to espionage. That's not what we're seeing here. This appears to be much more opportunistic and affecting a wide variety of industry verticals. So we don't believe it's the same activity to what CISA were seeing. In a number of these cases, what we were seeing is that the Telerik version was vastly out of date, and so we're advising everyone to maintain as up-to-date version of Telerik as possible. Now, that sometimes isn't as easy as saying it because certain services may bundle Telerik in, and so that's a case of going to those third parties and ensuring that they are running the latest version of Telerik, which patch these vulnerabilities. And one other thing that the Kroll IR team are doing to mitigate the upload of the web shells is using an IIS filter to block type RAU calls, and that stops the file uploads. So there's another option there if patching isn't able to be done imminently. And finally, I'm filling in for Mukesh this week to cover XLOADER. XLOADER is a long-standing malware as a service, info stealer and botnet, been around since about 2015. It first launched as a macOS variant in disguised as a Java program in 2021. However, lately it's gone through a pretty significant transformation. It now operates natively in C and Objective-C, and there's a campaign currently ongoing where it poses as OfficeNote with a valid, although revoked, Apple developer signature, and that allows it to bypass some of the Apple gatekeeper settings that are automatically applied to out-of-date certificates. The malware spreads through a typical Apple disk image, a DMG, and arrives as OfficeNote.dmg. Despite Apple reworking some of the developer signature security features in the XProtect built-in tool, it still is unable to stop this from detonating. Multiple submissions on VirusTotal reveal that it's fairly widespread campaigns that are currently ongoing. XLOADER also operates as a subscription model, and we noticed that, interestingly, that it has higher rates for Mac users as opposed to Windows users, sort of indicating that those Mac users may have some more valuable information on their machines than Windows ones. Take that as you will, but that's what we're seeing on their subscription page. And fairly similar to what we reported recently as well, OfficeNote generates fake errors, and it also drops payloads of random names and adds a launch agent for persistence runs. So there's a lot of defense evasion and social engineering built into the XLOADER binary itself. It's designed as a stealer as well, stealing from Chrome and Firefox, and doesn't particularly touch Safari. And also, as one of the defense evasion tactics, uses a PT deny attach, has extra delays, and employs strict binaries with high entropy, again, to frustrate detection technologies and analysis as well. So we'll be keeping a close eye on these submissions to public sandboxes and working on detection rules for this particular campaign. And with that, I will pass back to Keith.
Thanks, George. Really appreciate that. We're going to turn over to Ryan to talk about QR coding phishing. Right?
Thanks, Keith. Hi, everyone. So there were reports last week of a phishing campaign that relied on QR codes to social engineer victims to entering their corporate credentials into phishing sites. Although using QR codes is not necessarily kind of brand new, it's certainly not something that we report on or see a huge amount at the moment. So it's certainly worth pointing out. The campaign itself targeted quite a wide range of sectors. However, notably, the energy sector appeared to be the standout target, or the victim, with 29% of the total emails received going towards the energy sector. The email laws themselves were typically surrounding Microsoft's account updates, multi-factor authentication, or kind of general Microsoft notifications for security, to social engineer the victim into scanning the QR code that was in an image in the email, which led to credential harvesting phishing sites. And the image on the right shows the MFA variant of one of those phishing emails with a QR code displayed. And just noting that the QR code here has just been obfuscated. It would normally kind of appear as a normal square, as you would normally see a QR code. In addition to the QR codes techniques, the campaign leveraged legitimate domain redirects to further obfuscate any malicious links that the victim was browsing to. Typically, when scanning QR codes, the website will be displayed, usually the kind of first part of the website. And that potentially could warn the user after they've scanned the QR code of what the destination they're going to. However, using redirects such as the one shown at the bottom there, typically in this campaign was Bing.com, and it contained a encoded phishing link at the end there, really reducing the likelihood of any suspicion when the victim is scanning the QR code. It probably just show up as Bing.com again, further improving the likelihood of succeeding for the threat actor. So using QR codes within a phishing email could potentially allow the threat actor to bypass some defenses that scan malicious links in emails, as it's not actually a link, it's just a QR code within the image. And this puts greater emphasis really on users remaining vigilant to not scanning unknown QR codes in emails. In this campaign, and likely others containing QR codes, the aim was to gather credentials. Scanning the QR code would take the attack away from the corporate network and to a mobile device, which is where the code was actually scanned. And if credentials were entered, this could then lead back to as a secondary attack back to the corporate environment by using the valid credentials gathered to potentially access sort of corporate services such as Office 365 or through a VPN. Really recommendations surrounding, as I mentioned, because it's kind of looking to bypass some regular defenses, and really surrounding user awareness for scanning QR codes, but also in case of credential harvesting through phishing, deploying kind of the endpoint detection and on endpoints to monitor for valid account reuse is also a viable recommendation in case of kind of account compromise. With that, I'll hand back to Keith.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I really appreciate that. And we're going to go over to Dave to talk about WinRAR. Dave?
Thank you. There have been two recent code execution vulnerabilities in the WinRAR application, one of which was discovered being exploited in the wild. WinRAR is a file archiving utility that has been popular since the late 90s. It is particularly popular for home use because it is offered as a 40-day trial that continues to work even after the trial period expires. Because of its popularity with home users, it often makes its way into corporate environments as potentially unwanted software, being installed directly by users rather than the official information technology function, a situation known as shadow IT. The first and more serious of the two code execution vulnerabilities, CVE 2023 38831 is an error in file handling of the file names within an archive, whereupon a user double-clicking a benign document they intend to extract and open, the WinRAR application is tricked into extracting and executing a script file instead. This vulnerability is very easy to exploit, and we were able to create a working POC based off a high-level overview of the functionality from a Bleeding Computers article. It required only basic technical expertise to accomplish this. The second vulnerability, CVE 2023-40477, has little public information. The description of the vulnerability in the advisory from the Zero-Day Initiative indicates that this is a buffer overflow vulnerability within the handling of WinRAR's recovery volumes. Recovery volumes are files that are used alongside multi-part archives as a way of recovering from one part of the multi-part archive being corrupted. Similar in concept to RAID 5 for hard disk storage. Multi-part archives are becoming less common than in the days of internet dial-up due to the significant improvement in internet connection speeds. Therefore, it is possible that the company might be in a position to quarantine emails or instant messages that contain .rev files. With no real detailed vulnerability information available, it's hard to assess the complexity for exploitation. However, the binary for recent versions of WinRAR has both address space layout randomization and data execution protection enabled, two technologies that make it harder, though not necessarily impossible, for an actor to exploit common forms of buffer overflow. We recommend that IT departments update any WinRAR installations to the latest version, 6.23, which contains fixes for both vulnerabilities. We would also recommend that where appropriate log sources are available, such as process listings, the IT department search for rogue WinRAR instances to guard against any possible shadow IT installations. Thank you. Keith?
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. All right, Sarah, round it up with some ransomware roundup.
Thanks, Keith. So Akira is a newer ransomware that launched around March 2023. It's been reported that they have been used compromised Cisco VPN accounts to gain access into corporate networks. So with this, they're doing it without needing any additional tactics such as dropping back doors or persistent mechanisms. Researchers first noticed that Akira's attacks towards the VPNs were in May. They were stating that the group breached the network using Cisco VPN access and single-factor authentication. One researcher also pointed out that the attacks were conducted using Cisco VPN accounts that were not protected by MFA. Evidence was found of Akira using Cisco VPN gateways from a leaked data post on Akira's data leak site. This post was observed similar to Cisco VPN traits in at least 8 different cases. So this is suggesting that this may be a part of an ongoing attack by the group. TTPs that were observed from the attack are the SQL database access and manipulation, disabling firewalls and enabling remote desktop protocol, disabling local security authority protection, and disabling Windows Defender. So Kroll has observed these similar tactics, and they align with previous incident responses that we've received in engagements. On the next slide, we'll discuss Cuba exploiting the Veeam vulnerability. So Cuba Ransomware is a group that's now utilizing the exploit CVE 2023-2753 to steal credentials from configuration files on victims' computers and devices. This vulnerability is in the Veeam backup and replication that allows encrypted credentials stored in the database to be obtained. According to researchers, this exploit works by accessing an exposed API on a component of the Veeam application. This vulnerability also exists on any version of the Veeam backup and replication software prior to version 11A and version 12. This vulnerability was also recently exploited by Fin7 earlier this year. It was around March. So Kroll has also observed Avos Locker ransomware previously leveraging vulnerabilities within Veeam backup and replication software, and this is for data exfiltration. These vulnerabilities are CVE 2022-26500 and CVE 2022-26501. These vulnerabilities attempt to hide activity from detection technologies, as well as attempting to exfiltrate data and download threat actor tooling. So prior to this being able to execute the ransomware, the threat actor was detected and began deleting the Veeam backups using the legitimate Veeam backup tool. The threat actor was identified to be associated with Avos Locker due to similar infrastructure and related initial access techniques observed on other Kroll cases. That's all for me for the ransomware roundup, Keith.
Thank you, Sarah. And a big thank you to everybody that's taken the time to tune in to Kroll's weekly threat intelligence briefing. We hope you found the session informative, and we hope you do enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure you tune into next week. Take care, and thank you for everyone who took part in it. Sarah, Ryan, George, and Dave. Take care.